What is the lessons we learned about free markets, capitalism, all the things that you opine about watching that hearing yesterday and the whole saga? How do you view it, and what needs to be done, if anything?
Well, I see a lot of sort of irony and hypocrisy, particularly when I'm watching a congressional hearing about trying to protect the little guy from himself or herself. I mean, the idea that the democratization of the tools of capitalism and letting people make their own market decisions can lead to really bad outcomes. And I'll take them seriously when government stops selling lottery tickets that have an expected value of 40 cents on the dollar. It seems to me that these government officials don't like predation unless they're the predators against the little guy. So, I mean, I take it with a huge grain of salt, quite frankly.
The remedy would be what? I assume that you don't think we need to immediately start pulling the regulatory cards out and dealing them all over the place in terms of the financial markets. But was everything that happened okay?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's what you see is a whole lot of people actually posturing to show how much they care. And there's a whole lot that we don't know. So to begin with, I think it's a reasonable thing to say that until we understand the nature of whether markets were manipulated and what laws were broken, it's a pretty good idea to try to put new regulatory ideas on pause. But if you're actually posturing to show how much you care, of course, then you're going to get the cart before the horse. And that's exactly what was going on yesterday.
The way Wall Street is viewed, do we need to do anything with that, Arthur? Where did Wall Street go wrong? Where did capitalism, which Wall Street is kind of a proxy for, when did it go? Did it go off track, just PR-wise, or are there serious problems that engender a lot of populist feelings against the whole system?
Well, capitalism has to protect itself every generation because the free enterprise system brings incredible wealth and opportunity and growth and good lives to people, but it's counterintuitive. I mean, the whole idea that everybody can win is a very counterintuitive notion. It goes against literally how the human brain is wired. We think in terms of zero sum. And so the result of it is that we can't take it for granted that the free enterprise system is under attack in every generation for people who just don't believe it can be true. And Wall Street has never done itself very many favors. The insensitivity that it actually brings in the way that it talks about markets, the way that it talks about, or the way that it appears to favor the big guy over the little guy. It needs to police itself much better, and not just in terms of communication. It needs to pay attention to the fact that day trading is a really dumb thing to do because you're basically sitting down at a poker game with expert poker players and you're about to lose all your money. It's the best way to take a bunch of money and turn it into a little bit of money. And so at least moral suasion and more transparency in the idea of telling people more that this is a bad idea. That's in Wall Street's interest to actually do that so that we don't keep running into these populist problems. So
the fast traders and the algorithmic traders, the arbitrageurs, the short sellers that meet at the Yellowstone Club and decide to gang up on a stock. Is all that okay? Should it be regulated? What?
No, I don't. No, it's not okay. I mean, the manipulation of markets and manipulation of stocks, that's what that's trying to do is to create asymmetric information, which is a market failure. And we do, in point of fact, have a lot of regulations against that. They're just not very clear and they're not very well enforced. And they're not very well understood, as a matter of fact. So what we need to do is to make sure that that kind of market manipulation is clearly prohibited and that there's enough transparency in the regulations that we can enforce them. But having more hearings for more, piling on new regulations when we don't even enforce old regulations, that's exactly the way that public policy tends to get made when we're in theater as opposed to actually trying to protect people from market failures.
We had John Hope Bryant on, and there may be a little bit of a gap between, what you need to know to do this effectively and what a lot of people do know. And there's nothing that retail traders hate more than being the perception that they're being talked down to.
Right.
But the democratization via Robinhood and all these platforms is great. But is there a way to I don't know that Graham and Dodd, sort of maybe a more long-term perspective, can be emphasized so that, we start dealing with, people trying to save for the future, for their family, for retirement, and not gamify everything with a GameStop sort of a scheme?
I'm not sure that we can, and the cure might be worse than the disease, Joe. I mean, the whole idea of saying, look, gamifying is a bad thing to do. Everybody knows it's a dumb thing to do. It's a great way to lose your money. But in the same way, people make all kinds of decisions that are not intelligent necessarily, and the freedom that people actually have has value per se. I mean, giving people the freedom to make their mistakes, that can be important as well. Protecting people constantly against themselves and their own worst impulses. What should Wall Street do? Wall Street should be more transparent about talking about the facts, about how bad this can be for you, as opposed to setting up platforms where people can more efficiently lose their money. But at the same time, making something, giving somebody advice is very different than making something illegal. Because freedom per se is actually one of the most sanctified values that we have in our society. So my view is that this should be a much more of a voluntary, transparency-oriented communications endeavor. And we should be moving away from trying to lard on new regulations to protect people from themselves, even when they make these mistakes.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.